people who found out about someone else's double life. What's the story?
Story 1. We had neighbors who lived right next door, and we became great friends with them. We had kids around the same age and almost an open-door policy where we'd just wander into each other's homes. They were both really great people. His parents, who lived nearby, were also wonderful. He seemed like a good person raised by good people. Their daughter was 2, and our son was 3. We had fun together and had what we thought were honest conversations about life, or so we believed. Then one night, the 4 of us were sitting on their back porch like we always did. Around midnight, the husband said he had some news to share. His wife looked completely clueless. He proceeded to say, "We're getting a divorce, and in a month, I'm moving 5 states away. I've accepted a promotion, and I'm leaving." My entire body went numb. What? Was this real? The wife stayed calm the entire time and just went along with it. But we later found out he had never told her they were getting divorced. Everything he said was news to her, and he just dropped it on her in front of us. What a nightmare. After that, she opened up to us about how different he really was behind closed doors. She showed us these complicated spreadsheets he made for her to organize household chores. And mind you, she was a lawyer, working a full-time job just like his corporate self. It was really upsetting for my husband and me because this was a couple we related to, and we were raising our kids together. Finding out the husband was basically a psychopath pretending to be our friend was shocking. Ultimately, they both moved away. Both are now remarried. She's doing fantastic, married someone she knew from high school, and they have a wonderful life. The dad of the now teenager is basically a deadbeat, but at least sends money. Story 2. My cat. He was a neighborhood stray who started following us home during walks with our dog. Before long, he began letting himself into the house when we came back from walks, then staying the night. Eventually, he started hanging around during the day and eating here, though he still came and went as he pleased. Sometimes he'd disappear for a day or 2, but it still felt like he was with us most of the time. One day, he showed up injured. We took him to the shelter to check if he was microchipped, since when we first met him, he had a flea collar. If he wasn't, we planned to formally adopt him. While the shelter healed him up and held him for a few weeks in case his original owners came forward, our neighbors across the street reached out. Their daughter was sad because they hadn't seen him in a while. Turns out, he'd been living a double life. He was also letting himself into their house, eating their food, and sleeping there. They, too, thought he belonged to someone else, so they never officially took him in either. No one claimed him, so a few weeks later, we officially adopted him. Now we share joint custody with the neighbors. He's a 2-household cat with supervised outdoor time, so he doesn't come home with surprise injuries again. He's got double the humans and double the dogs to boss around. Honestly, I can't imagine a double life turning out any better. Story 3. Back in the early 90s, I was about 6 when a nice family with 2 little girls moved into our neighborhood. I was thrilled to finally have a playmate nearby, even more so when the younger girl ended up in my grade. Naturally, our parents spent time together during our playdates. The family seemed well off and was a bit over-generous, always offering gifts and inviting us to fancy outings. Around that same time, a series of violent bank robberies shook my small, peaceful country. The gang was organized, and the violence was shocking and unprovoked. I remember hearing that they shot security guards before even making any demands. My family was horrified when the gang hit our own local bank. It made no sense. A family friend had been about to step out of her parked car when she heard the gunfire. She ducked down into the footwell, terrified. That kind of thing just didn't happen where we lived. All the adults were scared. Not long after, my 2 playmates and their parents suddenly disappeared. Shortly after that, their dad's face was all over the newspaper. The police had tracked the gang down through a toll booth receipt left in a rental car. It was my friend's dad and his associate. Even worse, the mother had known all along. They had apparently fled their own country years earlier for similar crimes. My mom always said my dad got a weird vibe from them. They were vague about their past, their jobs, and seemed a bit too focused on appearances. I've often wondered what happened to those 2 little girls. We used to play princess dress-up, and one day they lent me a pair of gold ballerina flats I absolutely adored. Their mother laughed and told me I could keep them. My mom frowned when I came home with them and wanted to wear them everywhere, saying gold shoes were tacky. As an adult, I've developed a soft spot for gold shoes. I've even bought a pair or 2 over the years. Story 4. My father always acted like the perfect saint, constantly judging everyone around him as if he were above us all. Turns out, he was anything but. I eventually learned that my father had been planning to run off with his mistress. He'd even proposed to her while still married to my mother. His plan was to take control of all the family's accounts, throw us out of the house with nothing, and move his mistress and her kids in to replace us. She would have gotten everything, and we would have been left on the street. He got caught because I noticed something strange. A married man working until 9 p.m. on a Friday while his wife was out of town just didn't add up. I mentioned it to my mother, and she started digging. What she found was unbelievable. When confronted, he claimed that the first mistress was just a fantasy and that he would never have actually thrown us out. But my mother kept investigating and discovered that he had changed his life insurance beneficiary to the mistress and was in the process of transferring the car and house titles to her name. It only got worse from there. It turned out he'd been cheating for decades, by my count, around 12 different women over 40 years of marriage. And those were just the ones we knew about. He tried to brush it off, saying these affairs just happened and that they were accidents. The worst part was that one of those affairs was with my mother's own sister. He had actually planned to run away with her, and my mom later found a love note from my aunt confirming the affair. And while this last part is only my theory, I'm almost certain my cousin, the cheating aunt's son, is actually my half-brother. He's completely different from the other cousins and looks almost identical to my brother. That's something I still can't stop thinking about. Story 5. One of my best friends for nearly 2 decades. We met in 5th grade. Always had an absent father. Her parents were married, lived in a beautiful house, and had what looked like a perfect life. But I barely ever saw him. He was always away, working, supposedly a successful OBGYN who also performed surgeries. We were incredibly close, and her family even took me on week-long summer vacations, which was basically the only time I ever saw her dad. He wasn't around for birthdays, Christmas, or most major events. One day, we were having brunch when my friend mentioned that her dad had finally opened his own practice with someone he'd known since university. We looked it up online, a super fancy website, especially for the early 2010s, plus a few newspaper articles about the opening. One of them introduced her father and his co-worker as a married couple who had moved to a nearby city with their 5 children. My friend broke down, and as it turned out, it was all true. Her mother already knew. The affair had been going on for about 20 years. The arrangement was that her mom got the house, the family name, the benefits, and the holidays, while the other woman got him 90% of the time. He even bought both women identical wedding bands. That was about 8 years ago. Since then, everything has fallen apart. He became seriously ill, officially divorced my friend's mother, and legally married the other woman, supposedly for tax reasons. Now, my friend's mom is struggling financially. She hasn't seen him in months, and while she still has the house and a small pension, it's not enough. She might have to sell the home she's lived in for nearly 40 years just to stay afloat. My friend has even gone into debt trying to support her. It's just a heartbreaking, messy situation all around. Story 6. I've got a few stories. The first was when I was in my 20s and my grandfather passed away. Around that time, my grandmother decided it was the perfect moment to confess to me that she'd cheated on him throughout their entire marriage. When I was really little, before I even started school, she would often take me to a male family friend's house, where I'd sit in the living room and watch TV while they talked. That revelation opened a floodgate of memories. Times when my grandfather was out of town and strange men came to the house, or when she'd disappear and not pick me up from school, forcing me to walk home alone. After that confession, I stopped talking to her. My grandfather had worked so hard to give her a good life, and that's how she repaid him? Over the years, I've heard more stories from relatives about her cheating escapades. My first job was at a doctor's office. One coworker started calling out frequently, and eventually we were told she had cervical cancer. The doctors had even gone to visit her in the hospital after she supposedly had a hysterectomy and chemotherapy. She looked unwell, they said. A while later, she quit and claimed she was moving in with her parents about an hour away. 6 months later, though, the doctors were in that same town and ran into her, very visibly pregnant. And that wasn't even the craziest part. The man she was with was one of our patients, and she'd actually married him while he was still under our care, which was against policy and grounds for termination. Apparently, instead of just quitting, she faked a cancer diagnosis. Later, We found out that during her supposed hospital stay for surgery, she'd actually been there because her husband had beaten her severely. And then there's the story of my ex. Many years ago, I'd been dating a guy for about a year and a half before he moved in with me. I'd get up early every morning to make him breakfast and pack his lunch. A few weeks later, he quit his job, and I helped him find a new one doing traveling construction work, which meant he was away a lot. About 2 months into this new job, I started getting calls early one Saturday morning from an unrecognized number. When I finally answered, it was him, calling me to pick him up from jail. I drove over, picked him up, and dropped him off at his parents' house. Over the next week, the truth unraveled fast. First, the story he told me about why he was arrested was a lie. He'd been arrested for theft. Second, he was stealing because he was addicted to crack and had been for years, though I'd never once seen him high. Third, he hadn't actually quit his job before moving in with me. He'd been fired and was pretending to go to work while spending his days doing drugs with friends. Fourth, he was cheating on me with an older woman who had money. Fifth, when he started the new traveling job, he wasn't really staying on site. He was coming home every weekend and spending it with her. I immediately packed up his stuff and dropped it off at his parents' doorstep. But the biggest shock came years later. Nearly 20 years after all that happened, I found out that not only had he been getting arrested almost every Friday since moving in with me, but he also has a 16-page rap sheet dating back to 1999. Looking back, it made sense why his mother was so eager for us to get married. Apparently, the only time he wasn't getting arrested was when we were together, until those final months, of course. The most mind-blowing part is that everyone, his parents, his brother, his friends, knew about his addiction and his criminal history the entire time, and not one of them said a word to me until it all came crashing down. The only person who finally told me the truth was his brother's girlfriend. Story 7. My neighbors growing up were a man, his wife, and their daughter. The man, let's call him Terry, worked out of state, all the way across the country, and was gone most of the year. If he wasn't away for 9 months out of the year, then he wasn't gone at all. His wife worked at a local spa and kept everything running at home while he was away. Terry was a tall, lean, country guy missing a front tooth. But he wasn't the creepy or rough around the edges type. More like the hard-working, loyal, I'll do anything for my family and neighbors kind of man. He was genuinely a great guy, always mowing both our lawns, lending a hand whenever needed, and even helping us restrain my formerly crackhead uncle one New Year's when he got out of control until the cops showed up. Honestly, you couldn't ask for a better neighbor. Fast forward about 10 years. I had already moved out of my parents' house. One day I went back to visit, and I noticed the neighbors had all new vehicles. My mom told me that Terry and his family didn't live there anymore. Apparently, during all those years working away in another state, Terry had managed to start not one, but 2 additional families, and had kids with both women. It took his wife 10 years to find out. She later admitted that, as painful as it was, she wasn't even that angry. He'd been gone so much that her emotional connection to him had faded long before the truth came out. As for his other lives, he'd been living full-time with one family during his 9-month stretches away for work, and whenever he returned home, he told that family he had business trips. The third family was apparently a strange situation, a woman who already had 2 baby fathers in and out of her house, so Terry just became the third. He'd come and go as he pleased there too. Despite all that, I still can't bring myself to hate the guy. Terry was solid in a lot of ways. He once handcrafted these huge wooden motorcycle-shaped yard ornaments in memory of my mom's late brother and gave them to her for her birthday. 3 families or not, I've got no hard feelings toward him. Story 8. I had a friend I met on GTA Online. She became close with my girlfriend and me. We were friends for about 5 years. Around 2 years ago, she told us she'd given birth to twin boys. She'd come over to our house, leave the twins with her ex-husband's mom, and hang out with us and our kids. She even showed us photos of her babies and talked about them all the time. One day, we were planning a little get-together like we often did, but she stopped answering her phone. My girlfriend and I immediately feared the worst. She had told us before that her ex-husband had threatened to kill her and the kids, and that he'd recently been in a mental facility. We thought maybe he had gotten out and done something terrible. She had also once told us that the reason they split up was because he cheated on her while she was in the hospital giving birth to their twins. Horrifying, right? So when we couldn't reach her, we panicked. We called the police, got them involved, and started trying to track down any information we could. We even started using Yellow Pages and Facebook to try to find her ex-husband's mother. But we started noticing weird inconsistencies. The last name was slightly different, the address she'd given me, in case anything ever happened, didn't have an apartment number, and things just weren't adding up. She'd said she lived in the same complex as her sister, so I managed to find her sister's exact apartment number and used that to dig deeper. Eventually, we found the number for her supposed ex-mother-in-law and decided to call her. That's when everything unraveled. The woman told us that my friend had never had any kids. She had been lying about it for an entire year. She'd also lied about her ex-husband's job, claiming he worked for the government and would get me a position there after I finished my criminal justice degree. In reality, he worked at an auto parts store or something similar. To make it worse, she had texted me from a fake number, pretending to be him to keep up the lie. As for the pictures of the twin boys, I reverse image searched them and found they weren't from the internet, which means they were actually photos of real kids she personally knew, not hers. When confronted, she tried to backpedal, saying she'd lied because she'd suffered a miscarriage and couldn't bring herself to tell anyone. But when I checked with the ex-husband's mother, she confirmed that even that was a lie. In the end, it turned out she had put her ex through absolute hell, constantly faking pregnancies and miscarriages until he couldn't take it anymore and left her. That was the real reason for their breakup. Story 9. My stepfather was secretly living a double life as a closeted gay swinger, and he'd throw huge parties at our house whenever he was left home alone. The way he got caught was almost absurd. He used Craigslist to organize hookups and parties, and he'd always CC copies of the messages to his personal email for reference. One day, though, he accidentally CC'd his entire party planning email chain to his own son, my stepbrother, because they shared the same first name, and autocorrect picked the wrong address. So yeah, his son suddenly got an email from his dad graphically describing how much he wanted to get his ass pounded, and that was pretty much the end of his decades-long secret life. Instead of trying to deny it or cover it up, he weirdly gave up all his email passwords, which meant the whole family got to see everything. We were able to match the dates of his vacations or business trips to the times he was actually hosting massive swinger parties at home. All those times he couldn't make it to a grandkid's birthday because he couldn't find a kennel for the dog. Yeah, turns out those were the same weekends he packed the house full of guests, pool and jacuzzi included. We used to think it was so sweet that he'd have the house deep cleaned after those weekends. Now, not so much. Some other highlights from his emails included him meeting people for quickies during what he called long walks in the woods with my old dog, the one I'd let him and my mom keep after I moved out. He'd write things like, "She won't bother us." There were also a few stories involving Costco, specifically his love for Costco hot dogs and certain activities that took place in the parking lot. Let's just say I walk past those cars differently now. I also found out through his emails that he could apparently afford to buy new cars for some of his boyfriends. But for some reason, he couldn't afford to help pay for the college tuition he'd promised me. The worst part came during my mom's divorce, when I confronted him about his sexuality. I tried to be understanding. I told him I got that he grew up in a time when being gay wasn't accepted, and that maybe marrying my mom had been part of trying to survive in a conservative world. I told him it was okay to just be who he was now, that he didn't have to hide anymore. But instead of coming clean or owning it, he went off the deep end, insisting he wasn't gay and that his urges were caused by fluoride in the drinking water. Literal Alex Jones conspiracy nonsense. The last photo I ever saw of him before he died was him and his friend, clearly his partner, on a beach, both wearing matching MAGA hats. Story 10. I have a coworker who still wears a mask. Yeah, for years after COVID. I always thought it was a little odd, but whatever, maybe she lives with someone vulnerable or just prefers it. One night, though, curiosity got the better of me. I did some light Googling and pretty easily found her social media accounts. And it turns out she's actually a somewhat popular Twitch streamer with around 50,000 subscribers. I don't know much about streaming, but from what I understand, that's a solid following. Anyway, it's definitely her. Same voice, same tattoos, everything. I'm guessing she wears the mask at work to lower the chances of someone recognizing her. She's also involved in this niche hobby scene I've heard of, but know almost nothing about, and honestly, her videos were kind of incomprehensible to me. Apparently, she also runs a Patreon with some mildly risque photos, Nothing explicit, but it probably adds another reason to stay a bit anonymous at her day job. And in her bio, she claims streaming is her only source of income, which is kind of funny because, well, she works right next to me full-time. I guess she's keeping her options open since streaming probably isn't a forever career. What really blows my mind is how much she does. She streams 4 times a week for about 6 hours each session, works a full-time job, and still keeps up with all the promo content that comes with that lifestyle. I honestly have no idea when she sleeps. But yeah, 100% her. And now every time I see her in that mask, I can't help but think about her secret second life as an internet micro-celebrity. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.